The May 1st, 2017 meeting of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority to order. Mr. Lakeman, will you give the roll, please?
Sure. Chair of the Belcher meeting.
Present.
Paul Huff. Here. John Sharp. Here. Dane Slater, alternate. Ellen Pudrick, alternate.
Here.
Nicholas Vitale, who said he'd be late. James Pierce. Here. Who is vice chair. Fred Zorn. Here. Mike Rackelift. Here. And Irene Spanos.
Here.
Non-voting, Oakland County.
Quorum present. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is, because we meet so frequently, we elect officers almost every time we meet. And it is the election of officers. Currently, I am the chair, Jim is the vice chair, and Nick Vitale is the secretary. So it's up to you all to decide what you want to do about officers. The chair will entertain a motion.
Are the present officers willing to continue in this determined year? And if so, I'll move it by acclamation.
I'll second that. Okay, Fred, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, and I would appreciate if someone else would second it, just to be sure. Thanks, John. To retain the current officers. Discussion?
Strong statement to your leadership the past year, a tremendous amount of work, and appreciate you folks getting us here.
We have good staff.
I'll say the same.
We have good staff. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have in front of us the minutes of the last time we actually met, July 14th, 2015. I think you all were sent those. So it contains a lengthy resolution, which I assume that everyone has read. So I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Fred. Any second?
Second.
Thanks, John. It has been moved and seconded that the meeting minutes from July 14th, 2015 be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Old business. The recommendation to amend and restate the Automation Alley Smart Zone Agreement. Which of you staff members wants to give a synopsis?
I'm ready.
Thanks, Mark, please.
As we all know, this has been a long process to amend our plans, and it's been about 3-4 years. And this agreement will formalize our joint LDFA plan, which was approved almost a year ago at the state level. And the treasurer and executive director or president of MEDC has certified our capture of school tax. And so what you're recommending for approval here is the amended agreement with MEDC that will effectuate our plan and extend the life 15 years of the plans, but also can you explain, Shelley, what's happening? Because you're enlarging your district, I believe?
Sure. We're formalizing an area that was originally intended to be included in our smart zone, so it encompasses our entire business park around our federal mogul properties, the Blue Cross Blue Shield properties, as well it adds the campus of Lawrence Technological University, where we are establishing an accelerator, which will work in conjunction with Automation Alley.
Thank you.
Thank you. So after this joint meeting of the bodies, the Troy subcommittee will stay in this room and make a recommendation, hopefully an approval of the agreement. And we have another conference room right next door in our office where Southfield can meet on your own and make your recommendation for approval. And then I anticipate sending this to our city council, not at our next meeting, the 8th of May, because the agenda's already been sort of set what we're going to do, but the second meeting in May, and I forget the date.
And I believe ours will go at the same council meeting that yours will.
Yeah, we're usually on the same day.
Yes.
And if you have any questions, feel free to.
Well, I do have a question about the addition of Lawrence Tech campus. That really doesn't affect anything because there's no taxes to capture, right?
That's correct. We needed to formalize that because our intention is to develop a physical space where companies can meet and work with the university. And in order for us to utilize our dollars that we're collecting at a physical location, it must be included in the zone. And so we've been able to use our funds for marketing purposes and to hold classes, but to actually build out the space, it had to be designated in the plan.
Any other questions for either body? That's why we had scheduled this meeting for now, was so that anybody before they voted in a subcommittee could get their questions answered.
And Madam Chair, to clarify, our next council meeting that this could go on to is May 22nd.
Yeah.
Just for you to know.
So, then, we will leave this to be handled with the subcommittees at this time, or do you want a general motion here, and then we'll ratify it on our subcommittee?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, second?
Supported.
Thank you, Mike. It has been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution for the cities of Southfield and Troy, Joint Local Development Finance Authority Certified Technology Park, amended and restated Automation Alley Smart Zone Agreement be forwarded to council for approval. All those, no discussion anymore? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. Motion passes unanimously. Your agenda says that Tom Kelly, the Executive Director of Automation Alley, will be here. For those of you who know either Tom or Pavan, Pavan is here. And would you please take that seat so that we can all have some camaraderie here? Paul Mazumber, who is the COO of Automation Alley, so it's not like he's a very small second fiddle, he's a big second fiddle. So. Welcome.
Thank you.
Since this is the Automation Alley Smart Zone, do you want to bring us up to date on not only how you use our funds, but what the goals and new innovations that Automation Alley is pushing right now are?
Sure. So, I guess I'll start with a question. Has anybody heard of the term Industry 4.0? One. Good. So this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about it. So when Tom took over Automation Alley, and that was in August of 2016, what we did was we kind of looked back and said, what should we really be focusing on as an organization? We were perceived as a networking organization and adding value to the community, to the business, academia, and governmental agencies through, networking and things like that. But it was, a little fuzzy as to what the actual product was, so to speak. Tom and I both come from a business background, and we wanted to kind of define, a product for Automation Alley that makes sense, that then kind of helps us crystallize, our offering. As we look through the ecosystem, we found out that there's a lot of activity that goes on, especially when it comes to manufacturing and technology. There's a lot of activity that was going on around this concept of mobility, right? So the automotive companies are not saying we're making cars anymore, we're delivering mobility. That's sort of the big new concept right now. And within that context is this notion of mobility includes ride sharing, it includes essentially offering transportation as a service, no longer, and there's many business model reinvention and so on. In that space, there's also the discussion of autonomous vehicles. So we felt that particular space was being very well kind of addressed by other players. We then also looked at what's going on in Southeast Michigan particularly. And we saw, of course, you can't ignore the supply chain, right? You can't ignore the fact that we have a huge concentration of manufacturing and technology businesses. And as we did more research, we found out that what's really happening on the factory floor wasn't really being kind of addressed. There wasn't anybody kind of saying, we really need to look at this. And the research led to this concept of Industry 4.0. So Industry 4.0 is a term that was coined by the German government in response to Germany's demographic reality, which is very high standards of living, a strong manufacturing base, generally declining population rates, and the need to automate. Not to mention that this was happening anyways because of the technology that was coming out of Silicon Valley, the digital technology. So very quickly, what Industry 4.0 means is it's the fourth industrial revolution that we're really seeing. The first one, if you will, was actually the beginning of the industrial age, and that was converting from what we would call muscle power to fuel power, right? That's when the steam engine was created, and we were actually moving from either animal or human, raw ability to move stuff to being able to carry or move or transport large objects and things like that. That then led to the assembly line and electricity, which was the second industrial revolution. And that had automation in manufacturing, but it also had improvements in electricity, right? The third one was computing, and essentially the first elements of automation, so basically fixed robotics and things like that. The fourth industrial revolution is the meeting of the physical and digital together. And now that is essentially where the world is going. So we're talking about technologies like modeling, simulation, and visualization, artificial intelligence and big data analytics, 3D printing, sensors and Internet of Things. And all of these are essentially highly exponential technologies. These technologies can tend to have very high levels of productivity and also highly disruptive. Each and every one of these sectors in and of themselves is very disruptive. Together, they become extremely disruptive. And what we felt was there's no one really having that conversation on what is the impact of these technologies on our factory floor. And so that's what we sort of, we started talking to some of our constituents, some of our members, and started saying, hey, what does this resonate? Does this make sense? And everyone, almost to a T, was like, yeah, we've heard of it. We have no idea what to do about it. And we're going to respond. And typically, the supply chain in our area, primarily driven by the demand of the big three, or and even international automotive companies, has been very responsive and reactive. And what we really need to do when you have Industry 4.0 is you have to be much more proactive, because sometimes as the supply chain, you have to innovate in advance of, because the times are shrinking. Geographies aren't as relevant anymore because designs are digital. Designs can be shipped over. An example of this Industry 4.0, one of the sectors is additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And one of the executives of Autodesk said, back in the day, you would have to put in maybe 13,000 Barbies manufactured in China on a shipping container. Today, you can have 200,000 Barbies worth of polymer material that can be put in a shipping container that can be printed on site using 3D printing. Now, mind you, 3D printing is not, there yet in terms of volume for the automotive, but companies like Boeing are actually using it in aerospace because their volumes are lower. So the point is, how does a small, medium-sized manufacturer put their arms around these technologies? Because the large companies have the resources, they have access to capital. The smaller businesses sometimes don't. And so we started kind of having this conversation. So we said, all right, so now that we have Industry 4.0, what do we do? How do we actually put this out there? So what we've done is now we've created 3 initiatives. So the first one is what we're calling the Tech Takeover series. The Tech Takeover is a specific topic of discussion put together. It's a sponsored event by a thought leader in a particular sector. So we might have a tech takeover on robotics. We had one a few weeks ago where they were talking about human-robot collaboration. And the idea is to essentially have some thought leadership and some education around that particular topic. Every Wednesday, we have these sponsored events for a series of essentially 96, which is the 8 sectors times 12 events. So 12 events per month, per year, 1 per month in each sector, 96 events. That's one thing, and that's just an ongoing thing. So we had a tech takeover this past Wednesday, for example. The other thing that we're having is in November, we will be having our first Industry 4.0 conference, and we're making it a global conference. It's focused on business, even though there's a lot of technology implications. Really, the concepts and the ideas and the understanding has to start with business. So it's called Integrate with the letter 8 conference. We'll be having it in Detroit at the GM headquarters. The idea being starting with advances to challenges and financial considerations to a blueprint for success. So it's going to be essentially a day-long event for executives to be able to put their arms around it. The third thing that we're doing is every February or so we have something called a technology report, and we're going to be recrafting that technology report to have very specific action items for companies to follow. And what we're doing is we're assembling all the knowledge that's around each and every one of these sectors, but we're contextualizing it for Southeast Michigan because it has to make sense locally. So that's what we call the aggregate learning. Each and every one of our services now has that Industry 4.0 component. So, for example, International Business Services that Noel runs, Noel Nebshahir, we will have a standing trade mission out to Hanover Messe, which is the largest industrial conference. In fact, I was there this past week, and it's just absolutely mind-boggling. It's like 20 Cobos, on this big, huge campus. I mean, it's just absolutely massive. So we'll be taking companies over there. We'll be continuing outreach and helping companies kind of, extend their footprint globally. We have an entrepreneurship group where we actually help companies. We guide them through a process of essentially become stronger from the inside out. It's called the 7 Cs program. That 7 Cs program is going to get essentially focused on helping a small or medium-sized manufacturer essentially transform themselves from the inside. So the idea would be, let's say someone comes into this tech takeover and they like the idea. They say, okay, this 3D printing sounds great, but what does it mean for my business? We're creating a program to actually help a company kind of go through that, and it starts with governance, and then we're going to be putting them with experts who will help them lead their organization so that they can extract more cash flow that they can then reinvest in the organization. We're going to be partnering with consulting firms who have some presence in these global technologies that can then give them very specific advice on how they can move. So essentially, they'll be continuing to run their business, but we will be there to help them. And the nice thing is, as a nonprofit, we don't have a vested interest other than grow your business, generate jobs, reinvest in the economy, reinvest in your local community, and just make Southeast Michigan, as prosperous as you can, right? Same thing with talent. We're going after grants that kind of help promote apprenticeship programs and things like that. The comment I want to make is, and I'll wrap up here, is in Hanover, even though I saw a lot of technology, I mean, it was like what I would call it's like a Home Depot to build a factory. There was a booth for pretty much every single technology. If you wanted to build a factory, you could go into each technology and build up your entire kind of your factory floor. But what I found that was really interesting is what I consider Germany's probably best kept secret, and this is this concept of something called Mittelstand. Have you guys heard of this term Mittelstand? I never heard of it before. And Mittelstand is the German ecosystem of small and medium-sized businesses that are run and governed using a core set of values for long-term sustainability, often family-driven, often family-governed, but using professional management techniques, highly innovative, highly externally focused in terms of their footprint. I mean, these companies export all over the world, which is why Germany has this amazing trade surplus. And no one ever talks about it over here, but that is the kind, if you compare the type of demographics, the type of business owners that we come in contact with, and if you look at the Midwestern sort of, the conservative approach to business, it's much more that than, for example, some things that we often chase, which is like Silicon Valley or something like that, where, the idea is there's this exit plan. These companies aren't designed to exit, they're designed to generate value. And so we think that we can really learn from how they do it. And it's not just a company mentality, it is also a mentality of using public resources, using apprenticeship programs to kind of keep the workforce fresh. And guess what? One of their biggest initiatives within the Mittelstand is how do we manage things around Industry 4.0. So we feel like we're on the right track with this. So it was great validation. And our goal right now is to sort of, get and we're making some progress, is to get speakers for our conference. And we're starting to see a lot of traction with that. So that's the update.
It's terrific. It is terrific. Questions, comments?
I'm just happy that here in Southeast Michigan, we have an organization that is focusing on Industry 4.0. If you do any type of research in this, all the major manufacturing hubs, global hubs of the world have this focus on Industry 4.0. It's helping our companies be competitive in the next generation of manufacturing. So I'm excited that they picked that as their focus. I think we're all going to benefit from it.
Makes the whole region more sustainable.
Absolutely.
Thank
Is Dom Holm still involved in 7C?
Yes. Yeah, he's the manager of entrepreneurship. Yes. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah, great. Yeah, any other questions? All right, great.
You've overwhelmed, and you've also given us lots of food for thought. And probably an hour from now, we'll all go, why didn't I ask?
Wait, I do have a question, now that it is percolating. The talent piece of it, and you said in Germany where they're seeing the connections with the apprenticeships. I can remember 20 years ago, the GM CEO was giving speeches about the value of vocations and apprenticeships and using that German model. And here we are back to talking in this state again about how important that the vocational education component is. So are you already creating those partnerships, or is at the state level we're hearing that dialogue, or did you see that going on and you're connecting to it? Where are you, I guess, in that process?
So we're trying. I mean, I think the challenge around talent is a cultural challenge, and I think it's because and it's almost like a branding and a messaging challenge relative to the value of vocational school relative to the four-year college, and I think it's a deeper issue. So we're doing what we can in terms of promoting the concept of apprenticeships and things like that. And my personal feeling is I don't think it should be one or the other. In other words, I think that
it's all of the above.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm an engineer by training, and I would have loved to have worked for a company, say when I was a sophomore or something like that, and start and continue to engineering. I mean, it doesn't have to be that's the only way to do it, but having that practical experience isn't something that I think that we value as much and we almost look at it as it's not a continuum, but it's like stages. So you graduate, then you get a job, and I think we just need to change the culture where, if you're in engineering school, you just work, and it doesn't have to be engineering, any kind of school. I mean, I know we focus a lot on STEM, but even if it's non-STEM programs, it's just this notion. I think over there in Germany, they just make everything about, what's the final product, what's the final outcome of this education, and I don't know if we necessarily do that.
Right.
So I think it's a deeper conversation.
Right.
Our latest update of the apprenticeship guide, which just became public a couple of months ago, we added IT. IT is apprenticeship, so coding and all that software development.
Right.
But people don't realize that, so that's very interesting. And the state is focusing a lot of new programs on, building more of the skilled trades training fund, which,
Right.
Goes directly to employers to help them create apprenticeships within their companies, so.
Well, we
it's a-
have great skilled trades training facilities right
We do,
here
yeah.
that a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize are right here where people can thrive and, okay, well,
Yeah.
obviously but I guess I'm just advocating for that because, the talent pool, 4-year degrees are great and there's, people definitely right for that track and there are definitely people in these, that are meant for these skilled trades roles that have equal value in a different way to our society and our region. And boy, are we feeling the pain of that. And so I applaud you for, having that be a component.
Yeah, talking about the 7 Cs, one of the things, so we know that there's a very clear roadmap. I mean, if you give us a company, right, that has the intent, if the leadership team says, yes, we want to go down this path, we have a very specific process that we take them through. And we know that on the other side, it's going to be a much stronger business. And part of that is to move away from sometimes that short-termism that afflicts a lot of businesses. And, and one of the things in terms of short-termism is, in a Mittelstand company, you'll see very few of them public entities. So they don't care about quarterly reports. They're all about the long term, but that doesn't mean that they're any less profitable because they're very conservative with money. So, so they have this really interesting kind of approach. And in that culture is this building of human capital. So they look at human capital from a long-term perspective. The turnover rates, there's an article that I have, and if you would like it, I can share it with you. The article basically says something like a Mittelstand company has a 2.7% turnover or something like that compared to something like 30% in our publicly traded companies, in terms of the churn. So when you have such a low churn, now there's an incentive for the leadership team and the management team of the business to say, we're going to invest in these people, which means we're going to give them training beyond, not just the formal training. And so they have this development of human capital as a different approach. It's not just a 4-year degree or anything like that. It's much more comprehensive. It's very closely related to the business. And so that's why it becomes very context oriented towards the business. It's not, they're not learning skills that can't generate a return on investment.
Any evaluation in that human capital showing up on their balance sheet, a company's balance sheet?
According to the article that I read, yes, that these companies have extremely high returns on capital, on invested capital. They compound growth at a higher rate. So even though they're privately held businesses, and even though they don't have access to the external capital, the internal compounding that they see in their growth is substantial. The other thing that they do is, because Germany is a very small market, they have to go overseas because the German market itself isn't big enough. So what they'll do is they'll identify a niche in a B2B space. They'll exploit that. They'll figure out how to make that work, and then they'll go to geographies all over the world and essentially do that. So if you've heard of the chainsaw manufacturer Still, they're a Mittelstand company.
And as you talk, the sociologist in me is arguing with the business person in me, but it seems that approach is much more holistic
And
than ours is.
Absolutely.
And much more systemic. And yeah, if you're not hiring for necessarily this square hole, if you're hiring for best player available, it makes a difference in your sustainability. Will you share that article with both Shelley and Mark, and
Yes.
they will pass it on to
Sure.
their boards? That would be
Yeah.
very helpful to.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if I have Mark's, do I have your email? But I know I have
You can share it
Shelley's.
with me, I'll get it temporarily.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. All right, anything else then? Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome, thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. You have a day job, right? No, thank you. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks.
board member comment. And Nick started it, so. All right. Public comment, I guess that would be staff. You're the closest thing to public there. Okay.
Madam Chair, just upon full council's approval, it would be great to get a joint press release out. This has
That would be
been a tremendous work product, and the leadership the communities have taken in getting the 15-year extension. Folks at the state didn't make it easy sometimes, but they also held us accountable and in a very
And we got it done
transparent.
anyway.
Everyone wins, so.
Thanks. Yeah,
I
that's a great- That's a great idea.
Yeah. Second.
We all have people who can do that, and you put it on
We
your
will
to-do
work
list.
together.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. Well, seeing no further comment, at 3:05, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Thank you all for